Welcome to Fellowship in Essential Oils. I'm Elizabeth Ashley. Normally, you'd be expecting to see the lovely Adam, but he has just landed back in Australia after a long time in the United States. And so I am joined by a lovely friend of mine who is going to talk about an oil I know nothing about at all, which is Elderflower Absolute. Please welcome my lovely friend, Candice Covington. How are you, Candice?
I am so happy to be here today and have the opportunity to talk to you about Elderflower. She is one of my absolute favorites. Bad pun intended.
Yeah, it's going to be the way, isn't it? You're going to keep saying it now. So I have never used that Absolute. So Absolute, not an essential oil, is that right?
That is correct. So it's very similar to, I guess the similarity would be is that it is a plant that has taken its second form. And so it is distilled from the flowers, but it's done through most likely either hexane waxes or fatty oil, and it's done with much colder temperatures. And it removes much more of the constituents, including the fats and the pigments. And so absolutes tend to be much stronger in scent. And if you, depending on the distillation you choose, sometimes they're even hard to pour. I myself like the non-hexanes because you don't have to heat them before use. And frankly, I like that their scent is a bit more, I guess, diffuse smelling. Like traditional absolutes could be overwhelming in that you would use just a drop with an incredible amount of base oil. Whereas I find working with non-hexane oils are a lot easier to work with.
I agree. And I do love absolutes, and we'll let people in on a secret. That is what your new book is about, right? Absolutes. So we'll talk more about that afterwards. But I have to say, elderflowers are one of the things that make me happiest in the summer. I love to see them peeping through the hedgerows, and I get quite frustrated though, because I read once upon a time that you shouldn't cut elderflowers when it's been raining, and you should cut them around about midsummer in the UK. Well, actually, with the movement of the seasons, they come out much earlier and it's always raining. So it's a massive source of frustration for me, but I always drink elderflower cordial and elderflower champagne when we go out. Do you get elderflower champagne in the States?
We do actually, and I love elderflower. I drink it all the time in like all of its forms, but sometimes we have to buy like the elderflower liqueur and do a topper on a regular champagne. So we don't have the fusion here, but when you go to a nice restaurant, you can ask for a float of the elderflower liqueur.
Oh, wow, that sounds gorgeous. So tell me a little bit about the absolute. Can you use it medicinally?
So I need to go right from the beginning. That is not the focus of any of my books. Yes, absolutely. It does have a healing history, but the dominance of like my books mostly have to do with how they affect you on the spiritual plane. So what I'm going to do is quickly get the contraindications out of the way, and then I want to pop into the aspect that I love, that I write about.
I love it.
Okay.
Go for it.
Yeah. So, okay. So this is not universal. So talk to your healthcare provider because it depends on which medications you have. But if you are taking blood thinners or something for diabetics, talk to your practitioner before you use a lot of it topically. And if you're allergic to honeysuckle, you may have a reaction. But those, as far as I know, are not super prominent. But go ahead and talk to your healthcare practitioner just to be sure. But the thing that I want to talk about elderflower is, and it's so interesting. So for you who do not know, obviously my accent will be a giveaway. I live in the US, and so we have probably different folklore and different understanding of the elder tree, say versus,
Exactly.
yeah. So I know that, and so I would love to hear, like, for example, I've never heard that you couldn't pick it when it was raining or, things like that. So some of the mythology around it here is you have to ask permission before you cut its branches and burn it. falling asleep underneath it can put you into a very deep, like Rip Van Winkle type sleep. And so those are more of the things. And then even though the US is not known hugely for its fairy culture, we still do have a belief that it is a very sacred tree to the fairy as well. And so I wanted to start by reading a folk tale actually from a Danish author. And so I thought this was really beautiful. It's called The Elder Mother Tree by Hans Christian Andersen. And so this tree has representation all over the world. And I'm just going to give a brief view of it, but I wrote it down because I wanted to say it verbatim as he wrote it, because I think that's interesting. One day, a sick little boy asked for a story, saying to his grandmother, "You can make one up right away," he continued. "Mother says everything you look at can be turned into a story, that you can make a tell of everything you touch." His grandmother replied, "Yes, but my favorite stories are the real ones that come all by themselves. They come knocking at my forehead, and I say, 'Here I am.'" Her grandson answered, "Will there be a knock soon?" The grandmother laughed and said, and she put the elderflower tea in the pot and poured hot water over it. And she said, "Pretty soon, I'm sure she will come." And I love that, because what I hear right there is that there's two types of perceptions. Yes, everything does embody a story, every aspect of nature and every aspect that we come into in this beautiful wide world and universe does have a story aspect. In fact, that's what my new book is about, is learning about nature as our original storyteller. But I loved what his grandmother said, where yes, there's our stories and there's stories. And she wanted to wait for it to come and knock on her forehead. How I would read that is when her intuition or her third eye was open. And so she was waiting for a pouring in of divinity for her to be able to basically condense that information to tell her grand story, a son. And what I also like in that context is that he was not feeling well and he asked for a story for healing. And so I think that is another power of working with the plant kingdom in general, is not only do they affect us on a physical level and fortify our bodies in that way, but they work on us on a soulful level and archetypal level. And their stories, when we use them mindfully, become our stories for waking up and healing. And one of my favorite quotes concerning this is from the Rig Veda. And it was just talking in general when a practitioner is working with plants medicine. And he says, "Oh, mothers, who has 100 ways of working, come and heal this patient for me." And what I like within that is you have 100 ways of working. So a lot of times when we discuss plants, and it's very healthy, normal thing to do, we write through our karmic inclination. So certain things become, very illuminated to each specific author, each specific practitioner, each person who, prayerfully uses plant juice. That plant is going to reveal a little bit more of itself to you. And in my opinion, what that does is it creates an archetypal story that we check in to basically the cosmic library. So as each one of us become more aware of an aspect of a plant, we introduce it into the collective. And so I believe this is one of Elderflower's finite gifts, is she helps us become aware to information that is outside of the mundane. So if you have a personality that you want to get to know plants in a very intimate way, I would suggest an anointing on the third eye, on the heart, on the hands, the solar feet, anything that makes you happy, diffuse into your house, and in a really reverent way, say, "What will you come to show me?" Because she's also been considered an oracle tree. And what is really interesting about the way she works is that she's not a fortune teller. I was a professional card reader for a long time. And it was really interesting to me when people would come in, they always wanted to have like a concrete prediction of something was going on, as if the world inside them, the world outside of them, each individual they were asking about, plus the non-human aspects that were always mixing around in that matrix to land on an immutable fact that is not going to change. Well, Elderflower helps you understand if you do have a personality where you do like to work with oracles, and obviously I do, but it helps you understand that an environment is not happening to you, but you yourself are happening to an environment. And so what that does is it changes the effect from, well, this thing is going to happen to me. There's not a lot I can do except for wait and show up or become reactionary to something because I don't like it, versus, okay, this is a result that I want. How can I understand dependent arising to help me deal with all of those factors to get to me to where I want to go? So I think she is so wise. And she does open up your gates of perception. She helps you understand that your environment is not immutable, that it's always changing, and it very much responds to stimuli on all quadrants, not just yourself, and your ability to be able to see very clearly some of those energetic causal patterns. So you're able to engage with them and work towards a clean outcome of what you would like. And so I find her empowering, insightful, and really honestly helping people to understand, even work with the concept of karma, because that's basically what it is. For every action, there is a reaction. So she helps people really become unensnared in situations when they can't figure out right action.
I love that. I also love that Hans Christian Andersen is my very favorite author. When I was a little girl, it was my favorite book. And I also have more to add about the elder mother. So it says in my book, which is The Mystery and Magic of Trees and Flowers. I'm so happy to get this book out. So it says in Denmark, its name is associated with Hulda or Hilda, the elder mother or elder queen, who lived in its root and was a good mother of the elves. And thus the tree was made her symbol. Should anyone wish to cut down the elder tree or even a branch, he should first ask permission of the elder mother. Otherwise, some misfortune would befall him. And the floorboards and furniture should never be made of her wood. And even a cradle was inadvisable, for the elder mother would come and pull the infant out by its legs. However, on the night of the 6th of January, which is 12th night, isn't it? One might cut a branch from the tree after permission was asked and spit 3 times if it was not given, making a magic circle with the branch in some lonely field. One then may demand of the devil some of its precious fern seed that gives the possessor the strength of 30 men. Hulda will then see that the fern seed wrapped in a chalice cloth was bought by an unseen hand, as well as supplying a superabundance of masculine strength. Fern seed keeps worms out of furniture and fends off snakes and mosquitoes and cures toothache. Actually, there's loads written in here about elder. I came across it actually. I was like, oh, this is delightful. You know how sometimes you're researching something else and it was like, it speaks to you. I've been doing a lot of work about Angelica root, in particular with the Sami people. Do you know who the Sami people are?
Yes, I do.
Up in Lapland, right, in Sapmi. And they are Europe's only living indigenous culture now. And they believe that both Angelica and Elder are both shamanic tools to contact the other side. And it's very interesting that you said all about it coming knocking. That's, you know, and also the Sami people always drum to talk to the other side, so they come knocking. They're very interesting. I would say there must be lots of folklore in England, but it's not one that I've researched very much, although I do know that it was said that Judas Iscariot hung himself from the elder tree when the betrayal got too much for him. So that's quite dark, but I think mostly now, I think you're right, it's to do with the Fae and about just magical influences generally. And of course, Midsummer Night's Dream, I said you shouldn't cut it except for Midsummer. Interestingly, the reason why you shouldn't cut it in the rain, and I have defied it before now, it makes it sour. the flowers lose all of their taste. So it has to be a nice day for them to have, presumably it's the nectar that makes it taste beautiful. Yeah.
It's
But
true. That
sorry,
tastes
say that again.
and the nectar really truly tastes beautiful. So I use elderflower liqueur to stabilize my flower essences because it is such a knocking on your psychic doors. So I feel like it is such an enhancer, like even a communicator when you're working with less chatty plants, if you would. So I use that as the matrix for all of my blends. And then when I was sitting with it, I'm like, well, how should I language out? How does this taste on your tongue? And I came up with a taste like sunshine, happiness, and hope for the future because it really, in my opinion, it's nectar really is exquisite and it almost has a sunshine quality. So that's really interesting that it loses some of that verbosity if you pick it when it's moist or rainy.
Yes, that's true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I have to say, when I'm watching it, we try not to have too much of it growing in our garden because it can be quite an invasive plant. But we have Sambuca nigra, which is a pink elder. Have you ever seen that?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's so beautiful. So the leaves are deep, deep purple, huge like fern-like leaves, and then the flowers are a bright pink. And the bees absolutely love that, and it grows into quite a large tree, but it's not as invasive as the other elders round here. But it's lovely. It does have a magical effect, and it's certainly my mum's favourite in the garden. She's always likes to sit and look at it and watch. But I do think that just as it moves, it seems to have a magical quality. It's almost like magic fingers because the leaves are so, what's the word I'm trying to say? They kind of seem like they're shimmering as they move. It's very pretty. Yeah. So we use elderflowers here for things like coughs and colds. And so if you get a temperature as well, it's a good one. But particularly for sore throat. So presumably you could use the absolute for that, do you think?
I would think so. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and diffuse into the room. Yeah, and so I have a question. In England, so in America we use elderberry for like immune support and sore throats and things like that, but not as much the elderflower. So that's really interesting to me that you guys use both the berries and the flowers.
Oh, so you don't use the elderflowers?
Well, not as much. So, like, if you were to go to a health food store here, you could easily find elderberry. That would be what we would use for immune support and sore throats and things like that. But you do not find the elderflowers outside of the liqueur, and well, at least nowhere I've ever lived in the United States.
Oh, that's so interesting. So yeah, it grows like a weed here in the hedgerows, and it grows so enormous, and you'll have like 6, 8 feet just covered in flowers.
Hmm.
And we do use the elderberries. In particular, my sister makes tremendous elderberry syrup. But elderflowers is more very much popular for like summer drinks and for weddings and things like that. But the flowers are so tiny. They've got, what are they similar to? So you know how you get like an umbelliferae plant, like a fennel or a dill, and they've got almost like an umbrella, and they've got tiny, tiny little flowers, hundreds of them. So obviously you've got to pull those all off. So they taste different to the stalks, which aren't as nice. So it is a fiddle. It's a massive fiddle of a job, but it does feel like you are doing proper magic when you're doing it. So there is something in my book here. It says English summer arrives with the elder. Yes, I agree with that. And departs with the ripening of its berries. And like the rowan, it too was a guardian tree. Planted beside a farm or a cottage, it kept away lightning, as well as witches and wizards. And in Sussex, an elder twig with 3 or 4 knots in it was carried in the pocket as a charm against rheumatism. Farm carts were drawn by horses whose bridles were decorated with elderflowers to keep away the flies. I said the pollinators don't like it, didn't it? precaution that obviously did not include the black fly, which settle on the flower stalks in their thousands towards the end of the blooming period. And there was a peasant country belief that if the flowers were put into ale, a man and a woman drank it together, they would be married within the year. Isn't that lovely? Yeah. So what? So how would you use it day to
So,
day? How do you use it?
well, what? So I would. This is actually, I like that. So I'm thinking about through the frame of day to day. So I would say to a degree, it's for the individual who wants to, again, I wrote about this mostly through the lens of opening up your gates of perception. And so many of us, I would say almost everyone, could use a little bit of help with that. And maybe looking at this through the lens of freedom and helping you to understand how to navigate your day. So what I would say is I would want to emphasize this understanding of freedom, not from a removal of cause and effect, but a complement. Freedom, rightly understood, is a fulfillment of action laid in place to order the sequence of your life that will lead to clear results. This type of seeing is the long game, but it is the most reliable way to craft a future you desire, a path laid by clear sight and built with right action with wiggle room for divine inspiration and serendipity. And so I would say this would be really good when you were at a crossroads, need sight beyond sight, or even myself, when I wake up in the morning and like I'm kind of doing a to-do list, I'll frequently apply to my heart and my third eye, or I will diffuse into the room because it helps me basically understand. But I would say more than anything, if you got yourself in a sticky wicket, maybe like I don't know if this is an oil you'd want to use daily unless but you could, but I see it more like when you're dealing with a sticky wicket. How do I work with this energy? How do I unravel this knot? How do I clear this karma? How do I work what I want to do after I have that energetic base? How do I build this forward? So I would say, at least and like I said, there's a very broad understanding. So I'm going to speak to my understanding of it, is that I would use this very precisely for understanding energetic complex, see clearly what they are, understanding how you want to deal with that energy, and then deciding the energies you want to be forward. Because I really do see her as like basically a psychic oracle tree to help you understand things that when they're confusing or muddled to you. And they can be big questions or even small questions.
For sure, for sure. So Adam always likes to ask, what energy centers do you think it would work on in terms of chakras, for example?
Sure. And so that is my predominant philosophy system I work with is Eastern. So definitely the heart, because she's the elder mother. So also, I think you could reread these myths a lot in the like in current time, not you if like if don't build your cradle out of it, you'll be taken by the elder mother, don't sleep under her branches, you'll be taken. But I think also you could read this in the fact of when you're so tired, you're so weary that you just need to be held and suspended out of time and space. So I believe she also offers that gift. So I use her a lot when I need shelter from just life sometimes. And I believe that she does do that blanket of like unconditional love. And I really do like looking at it through kind of a modernized lens of it will for that moment take you out of time and space to allow you to have rest from what is right there in the burden in your day-to-day life. And so definitely I would say the fourth chakra or the anahata would be a beautiful place. And if you wanted to basically amplify that energy, I would apply it in a right circle. If it's something that you're in pain about and you wanted her to take that burden and hold it for you, I would do it in a left to pull from that. And then the base oil that I would want to do with that, if you were using that where you needed to stretch out of a current circumstance and be able to find your way to a greener pasture, I would use a strawberry base oil. But if it was something you wanted to release and let go, I would probably do something more of in the line of maybe a safflower. And so, and I would do that in the left because that would again help you understand and see how circumstances in your life were affecting you. So you would, after your rest, it would help you see action to either help you move away and release a situation that was causing you exhaustion, or move into a greener pasture that would allow you more of a fortification of self. So I think that's a gorgeous center to work with. That is the throat. And then also with her, I would definitely say the third eye, or the Ajna center, because in my opinion, she really is about opening up your gates of perception and being able to see outside of the mundane. And when honestly, when I think about the fae or the fairy, that's so much of their gift, is being able to have you see out of just, you know, sort of the pedantic, you know, the mundane around you, and be able to open up to see a more magically infused world. And honestly, when you start to see in more of that 5D realm, it makes it so much easier to navigate the world around you.
I agree. And what about in terms of planetary rulership? Would you have any thoughts about that?
Oh, do you know what? I haven't gone to this. I'm actually co-writing a book with Lori Fraser right now on astrology, but using whole foods. I wish I would have thought to ask her. I'm not an astrologer, so I do not know too much about that. But I would love to know. Do you have an inkling on what that?
Well, so Adam would always say if it's got white flowers, which this has, then he would say the moon, but the moon would be more emotions. I think in terms of intuition and the way that the different philosophies say that you can go to other realms would make me think either Mercury or Neptune. What's your thoughts about dreaming? You said about dreaming under a tree, didn't you? That Neptunian is dreaming. Delusions, trickery, that all of those kind of fit, don't they? So that's quite interesting.
Very much.
So his favourite question to ask now, I wish I'd never asked him it in the first place, because now it's his favourite, is it an oil that you need to have?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. I would say it depends on your karmic inclination, what your dharma is. I can say with a fact, my father does not need this oil. He just does not. It is not a sole requirement for this man, whereas I need it. My mother needs it. My business partner, Lori, needs it. So I don't think, so it's from the way that I've incarnated to understand the world, no one needs anything unless it's unique to their way they were, their blueprint they were born with. So I would say this is the oil for dreamers. This is an oil for spiritual seekers. And oh, yeah, and I really do think it helps with numinous dreams. And so I like that. And so that's a huge part of how I learn, is I really do have numinous dreams. And this is definitely an amplification of that. So if you're an individual who wants to have conversation to something outside of your rational mind, this oil is for you.
I need it right now. I bet you that Adam's already bought it because he's such a junkie, but I haven't gone and bought it yet. But I feel like I do. I think this is one that I perhaps do need then. So I have to tell people, I discovered your book long before I met you. And it took me months and months for the penny to drop and say, oh, that's Candice's books I've been reading. So I do a lot of writing for a magazine called Holistic Therapist Magazine, and your publisher sent the book to them, and my publisher said, I haven't got a clue what I'm looking at, send this to me. And I was like, oh, this is like crack. So lovely to see somebody writing about the spiritual side. So thank you for doing it. Can you tell us a bit about your other books?
Oh yeah. Well, I love that that's how we made our acquaintance before we met each other. And the fact that you live on the entire other side of the world. And if it wasn't for your work hunting group, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet you. And then it was Shelley Eaton who made that introduction. So I am so.
You must have been like person number 2 who came in. You were just in really, really quick. So that was so lovely. You've supported it all the way along.
Oh, yeah. So the minute I saw that, I'm like, who is this magical woman? I want to know all of the things she's saying. And so, yeah, no, that was a massive yes for me the minute I started to see your vision and your energy. So I'm so glad that we've got to meet in this way. And for show and tell, this is my book.
I
So,
love it. Yeah.
and so this one is kind of in a really good way, a nuts and bolts book. So I look at essential oils through three lenses: divine archetypes, the five great elements or the tattvas, and then the Vedic chakra system, which one of the reasons why I love the system so much is it is so practical. So when you were talking about the day to day, this is what that book is about. It is literally to help you navigate every aspect of your life from every day. And the Vedas are so fascinating because they believe the world came into creation from the five great elements. And within that, there are both negative or shadow aspects and then gifts or enlightened aspects that are within those two realms of like the continuum of each one. And so it is so interesting. And then they also teach that most individuals basically literally incarnate and evolve from two major elements. And so once you understand what your two elements are, you understand a lot of your unconscious and subconscious behaviors. And then I teach you different meditations, how to see the colors that are associated with them. And then also just, choosing with energy, what oils are up. And so I have them broken down into two sections. The longer write-ups are for what I would refer to as the tattvic oils. And tattva in Sanskrit literally means thatness, or that gives the creation of being. As you're well aware, in Eastern philosophy, they believe in a lot of the world we exist in is kind of illusory or Maya, not saying that it doesn't exist, but it has two very, at the same time, real components. That subtle energy or vibration gives rise to what we perceive as the material world around us. But once we understand that basically the frequency of the world around us, we're able to use, and I always write from a plant point of view, the plant that's able to go in and affect basically our subtle body. And then they act like an energetic blueprint or a map that literally shapes behaviors. And they also teach that the mental body alone is not strong enough to make changes. So we see this a lot when we make goals and we say, I'm really, really going to do this. This will be my new habit. And then just you don't. And it's not because something terrible happened to you. You just didn't. Or you tell yourself, I will absolutely never do this behavior again because it is not helping me in any way. And I can very clearly see this is causing me harm. And yet, majority of the population will redo that behavior again, even to their detriment. And so what I like about looking at things through a Vedic lens, and I also do apply that to my new book, even though it's more poetic, but in this one, it is literally teaches you how to work with all of your subtle bodies, not just your mental bodies, to exact basically true change in your life and to be able to cultivate like all of this wonderful hidden treasure inside. They teach that within the first and second chakra, which would be earth and water, that is your amakara kosha. And within that is every memory that has ever been, from the beginning to time until the end of time and in the present, are literally recorded in your physical bodies, in your cells. And if you can understand what the resonant plant or object is in your exterior, understand precisely what its behavior is, take it into your body in a sacramental way. What it does is it wakens up those memories for you and you become a living embodiment of it that allows you to be infused with this divine information and knowledge, just not on a mental level, but through every cell of your being, every tissue in your body. So it is incredibly empowering as you evolve into the uniqueness that is you. And it is so empowering when there's aspects of yourself that are causing you harm that you see that it's not a lack of will or there's something wrong with you. But the way we're hardwired is that we have these very complicated walls of energy inside that don't allow different parts of our subtle bodies to freely speak to each other. And so these plants are the means and the way to be able to support and move us out of this. Just one more thought on this. One of my favorite quotes by E.C. Whitman, who is a Jungian depth psychiatrist. He says that basically our unconscious will guard against any change out of fear until a stronger impulse is able to displace it. So one of the ways that I deeply believe you can interpret this is when you admix these plant vibrations into your body, have it be in an essential oil, a fixed oil, or an absolute, or the fresh flower, or a whole food, it becomes the mechanism that creates that structure that allows you to move into a more wholesome state of being. And once you kind of get a hang of this system, you're never alone. You always have Mother Nature there in her capital N to come and be of support to you in all times and all places.
That's beautiful. I loved how you put that. For those people who are listening on podcast, can you just give the title of the book again for people?
Oh, yeah. It is called Essential Oils and Spiritual Practice, Working with Chakras, Divine Archetypes, and the 5 Great Elements. And there is a beautiful foreword written by Sheila Patel, who is an MD and also the medical director of the Chopra Center. I was their primary aromatherapist for a long time, and so I was able to practice in a really honestly blessed and auspicious environment where I got to learn from Dr. Deepak Chopra, the co-founder who was a neurologist, Dr. Simon, Dr. Patel, Dr. Porter. And what we did was just basically, I was able to learn from them a lot about the Vedic point of view of how plants behaved with basically our whole organism.
Amazing. I was reading the other day. It hadn't dawned on me before that you'd worked with Deepak Chopra before, and I was like, what an experience. So tell people a little bit about your new book that's coming out, though, because I was in a tremendous position to write the foreword for it. So I feel very, very blessed to already know what's in this book. But tell people a little bit about it.
Okay, before I say that, I love your foreword. I read it like 6 times to myself, called my mom and read it to her, and then just every other person I could think of. That is such a beautiful foreword, and I'm genuinely so appreciative. So my new book, its premise is that nature is our original storyteller. And I became actually really curious about it because it was actually at an event when Dr. Chopra said that he felt what pushed Homo sapiens out of the rest of the Homo species where we evolved and other ones kind of fell away. And he believed it was our ability to hear stories and appreciate stories. And I spent over 2 years meditating on that concept. What did he mean? What do stories have to do? I mean, then obviously it opens us up to things like why myth are important and archetypes are important. Why does it so juicy in myth? All of us have kind of a universal concept of what certain colors mean or, what smells are evocative of. And I'm like, well, the original storyteller of all of this is nature herself. And so then what I started doing was getting very curious about specific vibrations of different plants. And so this book that's coming out, at least my intention is that it's whimsical and soft, and it teaches you to get into with your soul in your innate storyteller. It's not clinical at all. So it is like literally the opposite of this book. So the blending section, I teach you once you have your palette, if you would, which I highlight essential oils, absolutes, fixed or base oils, and then just like body butters, because, hard body butters, because I wanted people to be able to make lip glosses and, whips and things like that. But what I teach you how to do is to literally blend through the vibration and the sensation and the frequency of your palette that I teach in the book. Folk tales, ecstatic poetry. I teach you how to look at paintings. And then from that, you're able to blend the essence of it, everything from Goya Saturn's consuming his child to something more, beautiful, like the love of Venus and Mars. And so what happens is that I'm going to have a beautiful glossy image in there. And then I'm going to take you on writing prompts. And sometimes it'll be just a flat out match. Other times it'll be a feeling or an emotion it evokes. And so this book is really soft, and to learn how to evolve through listening and participating actively on an archetype level with storytelling from nature and using basically her oils and her, different plant butters to infuse this into your body.
It's just a beautiful book. I can't rate it highly enough. When do you think it's going to be out, do you think, Candice?
I do know this because they just told me.
Yeah.
August 6th.
Oh, August the 6th. And will Amazon and things like that?
Yeah, it's going to be on Amazon, Barnes and Noble if you're in the States, all like little cute bookstores. So if you have a mom and pop one in your neighborhood, please go and have them do that. My publisher is Inner Traditions and Healing Arts Press. You can buy it through them. So just basically anywhere. It is on pre-sale right now at Inner Traditions.
And you do have one more book about food, I know.
Yes. I love, love, love this book. Well, I love all of my children, but this one is called Vibrational Nutrition, Understanding the Energetic Signatures of Food. And this book was such an epiphany with me. I have basically worked with plants in some sort of holistic sense since I was 24 and I'm in my mid 50s now. And so I have a lot of love towards plants and understanding their role in helping humanity. And I've always had a holistic bend towards how I've eaten. But then just one day, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. Why does no one look at the energetic signatures of whole foods? And so nobody blinks twice about using a crystal for its energetic signature. Nobody blinks twice about using flower essences for their energetic signatures. No one blinks twice at esoteric aromatherapy. These are things that have worked their way so deeply into our collective conscious. Everybody accepts that this is a functional fact. Whereas whole foods, we eat constantly at all times, and they build our before mentioned our food body, which basically is our mediator of our level of consciousness in the world we live in, according to Ayurveda, which I happen to believe profoundly. And so I am like, do you know what? I very much, and I started it as a self healing. I'm like, because before mentioned, I really do have numinous dreams. And so I dream quite a bit, things that are illuminating and basically are super bossy and tell me what to do. And so I had a dream. I was in my paternal grandmother's kitchen, and I grew up in a frontier town in Utah. And so it's a lot of leftover pioneer culture. So she very much had an adobe house. She had a very cool kind of antique stove that you could put, you could even put like wood in there to do the stovetop. So I'm old enough that my grandmother was like the last vestige before, and she wouldn't let my dad modernize or anything like that. So her house was a very cool snapshot in time. So I dreamt that I was in her kitchen and she wasn't there. And I had this profound missing of her. And I started making a pumpkin soup on top. And then all of a sudden, her stove gave way and the wall opened. And there were these inviting stairs down into the darkness. And I knew in my dream that that was the vibration of the food that would help me connect with my family lineage or the wisdom of my grandmothers. And so from there, that kind of opened up my doors of consciousness. And I had a intense year of just dreaming that was super helpful. Plus all of the study I had done on all the other esoteric aspects of plants, it started really coming together. And so in this book, there are over 400 unique food items, everything from fruits to vegetables to spice to proteins to nuts, and then yummy teas and things of that nature. And then at the end, I have a chapter called Deconstructing Recipes, so you can understand why you crave certain things. And then I have another section called Creating the Fabric of Your Being, and understanding cooking, not just for your physical body, but as you combine these ingredients, you literally can create energetic structures that help you move into specific states of being. And so it's just, in my opinion, the most fun and empowering and delicious thing. Oh, and then I also do have a quiz in there to help you understand food cravings and when you don't like food. And so just in a nutshell, my hypothesis is if you don't like the way something tastes, but it's not a real food allergy, it has to do with a shadow issue that's either in your subconscious or unconscious that you don't want to address. And so you want to avoid that vibration because heaven forbid you take it into your body and heal it, and then you move forward into it. For example, when I was really young, I very much did not like yellow crookneck squash. Like I abhorred it. And my logical mind said, oh, it's because the texture. And then as I got older and realized its vibration was aversion to routine. And I have a very much a soul incarnation where I like an incredible amount of freedom around anything I do at any given time. And so eating that was pushing me into more of a structured daily routine, which obviously as an adult you need to thrive. And so I started eating it. And now I am much better with balancing my need for absolute freedom and understanding that structure in daily life is actually how you move towards goals and move through things. And now I like it. And in fact, I'll have huge cravings for it if I get into a pattern in my life where I'm not being as structured as I should be.
How fascinating.
Mhm.
I think it sounds an absolutely fantastic book. I haven't had a chance to have a look at it yet, but I definitely will now. You've sold it to me. Candice, has been absolutely lovely having you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
For anybody who wants to find her books, we'll have them in the links below. See you all soon.